Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Our last lecture dealt with the film industry and kind of much of its history and a little bit of its marketing and a little bit about how is a film made from script to an actual movie. Now, granted, one lecture isn't really going to delve very deeply into all of those things, so today we're going to do a little bit more surrounding the film business. And so if we look at the first slide, and appropriately, we have a hand full of money shaking another human hand. The film business is largely relies on financing from venture capitalists and really anyone else. Why? It's still sexy in 2018, as of the recording of this lecture, to still be in movies. So believe it or not, even though most people recognize that you will probably lose money on a movie, it is still sexy to be a part of one. And it is for that reason that money is still invested. And think of it this way, a lot of millionaires, billionaires, and other people with a lot of disposable income largely have everything that they could ever hope to want. And so this offers them an opportunity to make a foray into a new industry. And so distribution may make investments because it is investing in the movie itself. So again, if Disney is distributing a new cartoon made by somebody else, they may invest in the production. And we had said this in the last lecture, that in fact, a lot of people who wind up distributing the movie, meaning, do advertising and marketing and public relations for the movie and make sure the movie gets into theaters, may also help finance the movie during its production stage. Now, how many screens are there in the United States and Canada? Well, 40,000 screens in the United States, and we also have 3,000 in Canada. And so we have about 43,000 screens from which people can view movies. Now, there are several kinds of releases that help movies be exhibited, and they're very strategic in how they do this. One, we have a limited release. Those are your 1 to 35 theaters. Those movies are typically indie in nature. They probably don't have a lot of press, and so they're kind of testing the waters to see, is anybody at all interested? You can also do a wide release. Those are your superhero movies, the mainstream movies, 2,500 to 4,000 screens at a time. And so those are most of the movies that we see. We know that most movies have a wide release. If we've seen a trailer, if it has actors and actresses that we're familiar with. And so big budget movies, movies that are usually everywhere, those are your wide release movies. We also have a platform release. Blair Witch Project did this, in fact, in which it started as a limited release, but it actually began expanding more and more and more into other theaters because there was just so much interest. Now, with the movie industry, it's not enough just to figure out how many screens a movie might be on, and it's not enough to know who is financing the movie itself. We also have to think about platform exhibition. If we look at the next slide, we can see that if Jurassic Park 10 is released, we have a few issues with how it should be shown. In 2018, once again, as of the airing of this program, Hollywood is kind of at a crossroads. What we have here is that movie theaters and movie studios are kind of butting heads at the moment. Movie theaters are very much interested in protecting and insulating themselves from DVDs, DVR, pay TV, SVOD subscription services like Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu. And they want to have their window of exhibition, to be as long as possible. So that could also be making sure it's 30 days, or it's 60 days, or it's 90 days long. And so people are very concerned in the movie theater industry that movie studios will want them to shorten the window. And so movie studios, in fact, in the past few years, have said and gone to movie theaters to try to persuade them to let them exhibit the movie on the same day it's released in theaters on smartphones, tablets, laptops, TVs. There are even some firms that are trying to create a program in which you and I could purchase Jurassic Park 10 when it comes out for its first day of exhibition at home for $50. Instead of going to the movie theater, you and your whole family could purchase a rental of a movie for $50 and watch the new movie from home. Does this work? Well, movie theaters are very, very hesitant to embrace this because if they do, they feel as though this will kind of enact some sort of snowball effect in which they'll start losing control over being the first window of distribution for movies. And then it'll shrink, and then they'll have less say in what goes on with future movies. So movie theaters have really stood their ground and really tried to retain this window. Also, a lot of movie theaters, such as AMC and the Regal movie theater chains, have also put in plush seating, food, alcohol. In fact, alcohol is now the #1 concession at movie theaters. All of this in an effort to, one, bring more people into the movie theater, and two, demonstrate its viability as a platform for exhibition. Of course, movie studios have balked at this and are still pushing for movie theaters to be more flexible on the time they have to solely exhibit a movie. Let's go to the next slide. Now, windowing, as I had suggested before, is a system in which a movie is exploited and monetized at different windows, if you will. So for instance, for many, many mainstream movies, a theatrical release is where things start. We go to the movie, we buy a ticket, we watch the movie. If some of us really, really love the movie, we might even purchase a DVD for that matter, right? Having our own copy of it. Now, the corollary to that could very well be having a digital download of a movie, right? And storing it in an iCloud or some other digital locker. There's also pay TV. So once a movie goes to pay TV, you and I can turn on Optimum or Cox Communication Satellite or Time Warner Cable or any other cable or satellite system, and we can pay the $2.99 to see the movie immediately. Once this window has collapsed, the next window that movies are typically showcased in are on cable channels or even on broadcast channels, right? So you and I can turn on TBS, TNT, and perhaps watch Harry Potter at this point. And then finally, a lot of movies wind up on streaming services, which is a new ancillary revenue chain that really wasn't around even 5 years ago for that matter. But if those of you who watch Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, if you go on those sites, you'll see that a lot of movies are on there for consumption. Now, as I had said, there has been a movement to shrink the theatrical release window, and so this is something that is an ongoing problem. There is no easy answer to this, and it is something that we will just have to wait and watch to see what happens. Let's go to the next slide, please. Ratings. So, ratings have been found to impact revenue and not impact revenue. Studies are mixed on this. However, everybody is kind of in an agreement that the rating system is a bit suspect at best. The MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, relies on kind of everyday people to evaluate and rate movies for G, PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. G and PG are usually okay for children for that matter, although PG suggests that there might be parental guidance might be suggested here. Parental guidance for those under 13 years old is what PG-13 is for, really suggesting that you're with your children up till the age of 13 for this particular movie. Rated R is typically for adults. NC-17 is absolutely for adults. We cannot have 17-year-olds in the theater but for some sort of consent with parents. And so, generally speaking, if we look at this from a business perspective, G has the largest audience possible, although rated R movies tend to do well because they kind of appeal to adults more so. G movies tend to be a little bit too much swayed toward children, and so it may not have the appeal that a rated R or even a PG-13 movie would have. Usually a PG-13 is kind of in the sweet spot. A lot of comedies have come out of this that are very, very good with adults and also appeal to teens and allow teens to go to the movie theater, which is a major, major boon for Hollywood studios because parents may not want to go to the movie theaters with 13, 14, and 15-year-olds for that matter. Let's go to the next slide. Is the movie theater still profitable? So this is always a question that's being asked here. And so, 80% of movies are not profitable. Only 22% are profitable. And so 35% of profitable movies earn 80% of the total profit. So even out of the movies that turn around a profit, it's really only 35% that make the lion's share. In 2007, average ticket price was $6.88. It has since gone up in a decade over almost $2 to $8.65. It's kind of a winner-take-all mentality. And so this is a major, major issue within the movie industry. Really, since World War II, we've seen that audiences have been declining in the movie industry. Less and less people go to the movie industry. And so if less and less people are going, each year ticket prices have to go up to kind of make up for less and less people going. This has been an ongoing problem since World War II. And so the movie theater industry really has to think about how it's going to attract people in the future. MoviePass seeks to disrupt this model and has worked very, very hard to do so. Hopefully, with the amount of data that MoviePass gets in the future, we'll be able to learn a little bit more about what consumers are looking for from their particular experience. I do think that eventually movie theaters will start attracting people back. There's been a lot of progress here. For one, some movie theaters have converted some movie theaters into workout studios in which people are kind of on bikes and they're watching a screen that's in a forest or on a beach for that matter. Other movie theaters are looking into introducing virtual reality and even equipping movie theaters with headsets. And so the movie theater industry, I think, is actually looking very, very fortuitous in the future. But it remains to be seen what will happen so long as people still hesitate from going and may look out for other opportunities. If we look at what's going on with theaters, as I alluded to earlier, AMC shares are down 60% as of 2017. Regal stocks fell 36% as of 2017. Wall Street really doesn't trust movie theater revenue streams, especially in the future. DVD sales are also down about 18% in 2017. So every major studio, really but for Disney, has worked to convince theater owners, once again, to release movies on demand for $30 to $50 as a rental within a few weeks of the theater debut. And movie studios have also been putting pressure on theaters, as we said earlier, to shorten the window down to about 90 days, if not earlier or shorter. And so, as we've said, this is something that is still rocking and jarring the Hollywood movie industry. Let's go to the next slide. Now, what's in a film ticket? Now, on opening day, you might think, well, the movie theater industry earns quite a bit of money, but so must the theater. After all, the Avengers earned over $200 million during its opening weekend box office. I'm sure the movie theaters did well. They actually don't. In fact, movie theaters really don't make a lot of money during the first few weeks a movie is exhibited. In fact, a movie theater usually doesn't make the majority or the lion's share of movie theater revenue until about the 4th, 5th, or even 6th week. And really, by that point, few people are going to the movie theater as it is. If we look back on that slide, we can see that a movie theater ticket, although it's going up, makes quite a bit of revenue. Now, we also can see that popcorn has about an 800% markup. That means that if it costs $1 to make popcorn, it's usually priced at $8. As you can imagine, this is a large, large profit margin for movie theaters. As stated before, alcohol is now the #1 concession among movie theater patrons. And so this has been a major boon for movie theaters, introducing food, beverages, alcohol, and plush seating as a way in which to recreate a really unique experience from consumers' living rooms. After all, people have high-tech and high-definition equipment in their living rooms. You have to give people a reason, of course, to leave their living rooms. If we look at the cut-up of a particular movie ticket, we can see that for a $10 movie ticket, for instance, 10% or $1 goes to the distributors of the movie. You know, delivering it to the theater, video on demand, those kinds of things cost money. And so that's what that pays for. 25% is to pay for the marketing of a film. That's the lion's share. That's usually even more than what they pay for actors and actresses. Up to 4 times as much, even 5 times as much as what they pay to actors and actresses. The 25% usually goes to marketing of a film. 10% is for kind of recouping production costs, and 5%, of course, goes to the film studio itself. And so $1 at the box office earned usually translates into about $1.75 of total revenue over a decade. This includes people purchasing DVDs, pay TV, and other revenue channels in which people consume movies. Let's go to the next slide. State of the movie industry. The number of frequent moviegoers increased in 2016, but less tickets were sold during that time frame. Disney is seeking to create its own content app, but so far other studios really aren't doing that at this point. And as of the airing of this episode, Disney has purchased Fox, and so they are very much interested in creating an app that can do battle with Netflix and HBO. In 2006, the film industry went up to $38.6 billion, which was up 1% from 2015. In the US and Canada, it rose about 2% to $11.4 billion. Audiences 18 to 24 went to go see 6.5 movies per year, so that was the largest average among demos. And we also saw tremendous growth among African Americans and Asian audiences, for that matter. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if we're thinking about the movie industry itself, one big thing movie industry executives have to think about is, do I create a new movie or do I try to build off onto a franchise? And a film franchise, for the purpose of this lecture, is any film that has more than one franchise. So this can be 2 movies that are together, or it can be 3, or it can be 4 within the same universe with the same characters. And so if we look at this for 2018, most people are very, very excited for The Avengers. And this was taken from Variety, which is a trade magazine I highly, highly recommend, along with Hollywood Reporter, The Hollywood Reporter. And so superheroes are very familiar to people. People don't necessarily need to remember a whole lot to go see a superhero film. They're often very easy to understand. You can really pick up on the plot really quickly. And the other thing about movie theaters is that a lot of people tend to like superhero films in movie theaters because they're big, bombastic, and have a lot of fights in them as well. Let's go to the next slide. So, with film merchandise, this is another way for studios to recoup losses or costs or make money on a particular movie. As we saw with franchises are exceptionally important because people are familiar with the brand. And so there's less risk in going to see Ghostbusters 4, let's say, or for here, playing the video game Ghostbusters 2. We're familiar with the brand, there's less risk, be it financial, be it time-wise, or be it search cost, in finding a particular piece of entertainment we think we're going to like. And so I know that I've seen Ghostbusters 1, I know that I've seen Ghostbusters 2, it is a franchise, I am familiar with the franchise, I enjoy the franchise, I'm going to go play the video game. I might even drink the high C from the movie, which I did when I was younger. And so These merchandise opportunities, which are usually indicative of a franchise, you really wouldn't do it for a movie that didn't have a franchise or a few installations, allows consumers to have interactive experiences. It's not enough just to see Ghostbusters. You want to be a Ghostbuster? Well, you could dress up as them for Halloween, or you could play as one in a video game. This allows for an interactive experience. You're able to really solidify brand loyalty and even brand equity, the value behind a brand, because consumers get to be a degree closer within the film franchise ecosystem. And that means that an ecosystem might be comprised of comic books, TV shows, cartoons, merchandise, and other film franchise installations. This is true of Ghostbusters. There were two made in the 1980s, and then you had one made fairly recently. And you also have the Matrix franchise, which really delved into creating an ecosystem. Star Wars also created an ecosystem. You can start with Star Wars toys or the Matrix toys, and then you could read the comics, or maybe you start with the movies and then you go into the comics. The point is, you can start anywhere with a particular ecosystem. You can consume at any level, at any time that you wish. You get to know the film franchise as you see fit. Let's go to the next slide. State of the movie industry. So, as we can see, Universal is doing quite well in 2016, and so is Disney in the upper right-hand chart. Warner Brothers also is doing well, and so is Fox. Lesser, well-run studios include Sony, Paramount Pictures, and Lionsgate. What we can see for the global box office in the bottom left-hand corner is that 2/3 of all global movie revenue is made abroad. Let's sit on that for just 1 second. 2/3 of movie revenue are earned abroad. That's interesting. That means that even though the United States makes many films, most of the revenue is abroad. For those of you who may have seen The Dark Knight, spoiler alert, Batman winds up being in Hong Kong for about a half hour during the movie. Was that an accident? Probably not. If we also look at the Fast and the Furious franchise, we have a diverse cast who travel all over the world. These franchises do exceptionally well because of their global portability, their appeal to many different audiences. China, which boasts over 1 billion eager moviegoers, has a cap on how many foreign films are allowed into the country. And it usually vacillates between 20 films a year or 40 films a year. As you can imagine, if you're a US producer, you are fighting tooth and nail to get your movie into the country. But that's not enough. In fact, you have to make sure that the movie does well with consumers, that it appeals to consumers. And let's face it, with Fast and the Furious, it's an action movie driven by loud noises, violence, car chases, and other things. Is that easy for foreign audiences to understand? Probably. In fact, dramas tend to do quite well abroad, as do action movies. Let's face it, you don't really need to explain to an Asian viewer or to a Hispanic viewer or to a Swedish viewer what a car chase is or what kind of violence is going down. Humor abroad tends to be a little bit more difficult to convey, as not everybody gets the same jokes or laughs at the same things. Some things that a German might find funny, an American won't, and vice versa. And so this tends to make humor a little bit difficult abroad. Again, though, if you have a dramatic film or an action-based film with very little explanation needed, it works. Carefully watch Fast and the Furious, any of them, and you'll see very quickly that the plot is very easy to follow. The dialogue is all right, but it's not something that might be engrossing for people, but really the action, the car chases, and other things make the film portable all over the world. Let's go to the next slide. If we look at the state of the movie industry, we can also see that attendance is highest among younger adults, 12 to 17, 18 to 24, 25 to 39. There has been some slight uptick with 40 to 49 and 50 to 59 as well. However, we've also noticed that Hispanic audiences are slightly down, as well as Caucasian audiences, but African Americans and Hispanic Americans are up. One of the differences in the last few years has been the introduction of a lot of different minority-based movies. Movies such as Hidden Figures, Fences, with all or mostly all black casts, has been a boon in attracting African Americans to the theater. Let's look at the next slide. So even though movie theaters are very much interested in getting people in, there are some issues for movie studio executives in trying to convince people to pay. So the issue here is that people might find the movie theater experience too expensive. We can see this on the left-hand chart. In red, most people stated that movie theaters were too expensive, and that's why they go less now than they did in the past. However, in the face of movie studio executives, most people are not really interested in paying $25 to see movies in their home theaters on the same day a movie is released in a theater. Let's go to the next slide. Disney, the Dark Mouse Empire. And so this was brought onto here by the Hollywood Reporter. And so on December 14th, 2017, Disney paid about $52 billion to accrue certain institutions that Fox owned. What Disney took were a lot of Fox's cable and a lot of Fox's international cable networks, sports regional networks as well. And so what Fox kept were a lot of its news and sports departments. Let's look at the next slide to see what this means. So why did this happen? Why did Disney buy out Fox? They're both very powerful and they both have a lot going on. Well, Fox kept news and sports, which were less vulnerable to online ads and streaming. After all, people need news, people need sports, but people are going to watch TV and movies trying to avoid online ads and trying to stream those things. Fox shareholders got 25% stake in Disney. Fox shares have declined over time anyway. Disney gets a boost to its cable portfolio as it's been struggling recently with its Disney Channel. And Fox can cash out at a peak time in which it does not have to contend with Amazon, Netflix, or Hulu. Disney is now a huge leader in the entertainment ring. For all of us here at Late Night Learning, thank you so much for being a part of this show. Keep laughing and keep learning.